Welcome to Join the Conversation, a podcast of the Student Housing Matters blog. Join the Conversation features interviews with higher education leaders, authors, and influencers on a variety of topics relevant to anyone involved with on-campus housing. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of an individual interview, we have a panel of senior leaders from Lake Michigan College in Benton Harbor, Michigan. The individuals participating are Bob Harrison, the president of the college, Kelly Hahn, the CFO, Dr. Clinton Gabbert, Vice President for Student Services, and Ann Erdman, Vice President for Administration. This team has been working together on a large project, the college's first residence hall. Although it is a little unique for a community college to have housing, Lake Michigan College is actually the 7th two-year institution in Michigan to open housing. Not only did the team talk about their foray into student housing, but they also covered quite a few topics of interest to both 2- and 4-year institutions across the country. We knew when recording this podcast we just needed to get them talking, and we'd have a lot of information expressed in a different format. You'll see their team dynamic, how well they know each other, and why they've been able to be successful in their endeavors, not just opening their new housing last month. We hope you enjoy hearing multiple perspectives and voices in this podcast.
My name is Bob Harrison. I'm president here at Lake Michigan College. And I basically fix problems that the people to my immediate left cause.
I'm Kelly Hahn. I'm the Vice President of Finance at Lake Michigan College, and I basically pay for the things that these guys decide to do.
I'm Clint Gabbert, Vice President of Student Services, and I pretty much run the show here.
So you didn't say that very seriously.
Or convincingly.
No,
Yeah,
not
there was
at all,
no,
basically.
no belief whatsoever.
Okay.
I'm Ann Erdman. I'm Vice President of Administrative Services, and I design and build what they decide they want.
I think the thing that makes the team work well is that the culture here in Southwest Michigan is hardworking, humble, and focuses on team accomplishments. And so with this group, I think we tend to try and define what the priorities are, and then are able to establish the personal relationships that allow us to get things done, to move things forward.
I think we work hard, but we have a real sense of humor, and we use that sense of humor together, and that gets us through probably biting off more than we should.
I remember early on when we were just beginning to talk about a residence hall, we had done a feasibility study where we had looked at just, how many folks were literally going to be looking for beds, what beds are available in the area, that there was a fair amount of healthy debate. I mean, there were folks who were in very different camps in terms of whether this was a great idea, whether it was a great idea now, how it was going to change the campus. But I also remember the sort of almost light switch where we said, are we in or are we out? And when we said we're in, there was some sense of now we're all going to be in, which means we may still harbor worries, doubts, fears, still be cursing the decision
that he walks on.
Exactly, yeah. But at some point, when that light switch turns, there's a sense of, but we're all going to do this now. And I think that's as important as the debate that led up to the decision to go ahead was the decision that we're all going to support each other, even when, we wonder what in the world were we thinking when we did this.
Well, as Rebecca, my administrative support person, pointed out one day as we were coming back to campus from a meeting downtown, as we pulled into the parking lot, we were looking right at the building, and she said, if this really doesn't work out, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I said, Rebecca, you're right.
I can remember when I interviewed for this job in August 3 years ago. I met with Bob, we went to dinner, and I said, hey, have you ever thought about housing? And he said, no, over my dead body.
This is your idea then?
It was, my idea,
That's
obviously.
great. Yeah. Good job.
And it was dropped for another 18 months, and then it just started bubbling up. I think Ann had been approached by developers and brought it to cabinet, and it just kept getting pushed off, and then at some point it just got footing. It just gained ground, and I don't know what that
I think for me,
was.
it was probably the most frequent conversation I had in the community, where parents or donors or just leaders in the community would ask, have you thought about student housing? Or have you been looking at it? And we had looked at it in a very superficial manner about 6 years ago, kind of decided that it was not the number one issue we should be addressing. And then over time, we've got some other things off the list of projects to work on. And so it surfaced up again. And then it was surprising to me the number of people on cabinet that originally were lukewarm on the idea that actually became advocates and people to push it forward.
We also made a real shift. Somewhere in the past couple of years, we decided to become very entrepreneurial. We said we're going to go on the edge, and we did on a number of projects. We said if we're going to be competitive, we've got to move forward, we've got to take some chances. We did our research. It wasn't that we just went willy-nilly, but we did decide we're going to be on the edge and get out there ahead of the competition.
Well, when it comes to a sense of team, there's also got to be individual skill and capacity within the team to be able to function well. I think we had a great performance that was put together. Kelly, I think, did a great job of looking and saying, okay, let's consider this from a business standpoint. Let's not just consider it from a student services or from a college development, but let's take a look at the hard facts of what's it going to take to make this a break even and then a profitable thing. That helped an awful lot of folks get over the hump in terms of saying, this is how many beds we literally need to fill to be able to break even, and this is how we move forward and not lose money on something that's really important for the community. So I think that kind of skill is really important. I think that running into a consultation group like Capstone actually was very important in terms of us getting comfortable with the notion that people have done this before. You can solve any problem. You can get through anything if you have good, smart help. I think the other thing in terms of what got us over the hump was moving from seeing this as a place to offer a new resource for students who might be coming here from around the region to this is a learning environment. This is a place where we can do better work in terms of helping students expedite their journey through the college. Made a big difference. On the instructional side of the room or of the house, that was big. Faculty were excited about it. We thought faculty might be saying, why is this competing with all of our needs for resources and new faculty members? But I think once they saw that we could approach this as learning enhancement, they got on board. It made a difference.
I think you're right. That was a big change in the mindset. I think organizationally was that as we'll take a little different approach to this, we'll integrate it into our instructional enterprise, and that really did bring about some mindset changes in the number of people, faculty, staff, and then I think it lined up with what the community was looking for. That we're now perceived in the community as an organization that's taking some risks, trying some new things, and is working hard to bring them about. And I think that's being very well received in the community. I think short term, we end up with a group of students who love being housed on our campus, who find themselves integrated into student life and find their academic pursuits their needs are being met. I think in the short run, naturally we expect some type of financial performance that doesn't put a burden on the college as a whole. In the long term, I think it becomes another part of our efforts to change our image in the region, become the community center for lifelong learning, that we offer a great smorgasbord of programs, services, and opportunities for students and adults. And so I think in the long term, if we can accomplish all those, this has been very successful.
And also in a most simplest form, it means that we've created a community. That students feel like this is a full college, full service, that it's a place where you can have fun, you can learn, you can make friends, and you can enjoy the campus as a whole.
Yeah, I think we want to sit down with the residents sometime in September and discover that 2/3 of the folks that are at Beckwith Hall would not have come to Lake Michigan College had it not been for Beckwith Hall. Then we know that we've attracted folks who are looking for something that was a little different than what we were offering. And then whatever they were looking for, then the next thing is fulfillment. If they were looking to be just far enough away from home where they could get home when they needed to, but stay on campus for weekends and do campus life, then we've got to provide that to them. I'm excited about 180 students or so who say, I am getting to know Benton Harbor, I'm getting to know St. Joe, I'm taking day trips, to Chicago or Detroit, all of the big urban epicenters that are within a nice day's drive from us. So right on the other side of, they've come here specifically because we offered something that we hadn't offered before, is the fulfillment of that, and they're finding it a hospitable place to live. I think down the road, it's easy enough to do some analysis and say, did these students graduate faster? Were they more efficient in their experience as a whole, as an entire group? How was their GPA? We expect that they are a shining example of educational success, and we can tie it into them being at Beckwith Hall. That's the long term. In the short term, I guess the other thing is fill beds, right? I mean, success means...
Absolutely. Success to me means a waiting list, but short of that, it is a hall full of students that create not only a vibrant campus community, but the broader community, Michigan's Great Southwest, that will bring youth and energy and excitement to not only here, but surrounding areas.
Well, I think we also realize this is a project in process. No one thinks that we've got everything set in stone and that this is the way it's going to operate. We've talked to ourselves and realized this is going to be flexible, that after a couple months and talking to students, we'll be changing how we do mail, how we do things, because we'll get feedback from students, but it's a good start.
I think that Anne, in terms of has there been a good team that's been doing this, I think there's a certain amount of teamness that we've had to develop in order to pull this off, so that maintenance has to, or facilities has to sit with IT, has to sit with student services, has to sit with business and work through just the logistics. I know that student services folks, specifically financial aid, has spent an awful lot of time sitting with business folks and just talking about billing. That's a pretty good experience for the college to have, where we focus on something more than sort of our independent struggles with things and how we operate, but we've had to come together and solve some issues, and are still solving them right up to this moment in terms of how we will bill for housing versus tuition. But those are good experiences, and I can say that for the most part, our conflicts and struggles and hatred notwithstanding, our staffs have worked really well together.
It doesn't trickle down.
No, exactly. We've kept it to ourselves.
Well, for the most part.
More or less.
Minor issues.
But I think I just thought of that just as you were talking. I think we've become a better team having to solve these problems, and we will. Glitches will come up where suddenly we're saying, do we need more of this, less of this?
I agree, and I think even our failures will be successes as we move towards being more entrepreneurial, because part of that spirit is trying something and just failing miserably. And it teaches you to be able to take risks, and it makes you more comfortable with the attitude.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I'm a latecomer to the community college industry. And what I've learned over the last 15 years is how important a role the community college, Lake Michigan College, plays in the life of Southwest Michigan. That our faculty and staff our leaders are integrated into the community, working on problems, providing value that generally goes unrecognized. And so one of the community leaders called us, you know, the little humble organization. And I think with the residence hall now, we're perceived to have moved up in the stature, and now we're a community leader on some of these initiatives. And it just becomes such a, I think, an organizational changing environment for the college. And I think we'll serve the community better because of this project and other future projects.
I came from four-year, and I never intended to stay. This was a short-term career ladder type move, and got here and taught my first class and realized the difference in students at a community college. And the fact that they stop you in the grocery store and say, hey, guess what, I just got a job, and guess what's going to happen. And I remember exactly the first time that happened, and I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, we talk about making a difference and saying that it's a slogan, but it's not. I mean, we really do touch at a very real level and make a difference, and it's very satisfying to be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent 15 years at the four-year level before sort of seeing the light. And the light was that for folks at Purdue and Notre Dame, there was a certain inevitability of college. College was someplace that you were going to go because your parents went there. Not everyone, but for so many folks, there was a sense of that was the next step. Whereas there's nothing inevitable at the community college, which makes it exciting. Everything is an achievement. Everything is a second chance or a third chance or a last chance. And so when you experience students who absolutely soar in this process, the engineering intern that we ran into out at Beckwith, who had done her first 2 years at LMC and then went on to Western Michigan, when you see her success, you know that we were a part of critically making that happen. And had we not been here, it may not have happened. She may have struggled with just affording the four-year experience, affording that engineering degree. And so I think community college is the place where you feel like you're on the front lines of educational achievement, and where you feel like the stakes are high, the failures are just heartbreaking, and there are a bunch of those because you are talking about people who are walking on a razor's edge. But when you have the successes, they're at times against all odds, and at times they are the things that you know have the potential to change our communities too. Communities aren't going to survive without an educated workforce. Community colleges are the key to an educated workforce, and so you put those things together, and it's like we're in the thick of it. We're right where we need to be.
Well, when you get it down to a very student level. Yesterday I had a student in my office who has 11 brothers and sisters, and she's going to be one of the resident RAs, and she's excelling in school, and if it wasn't for community college, I don't know that she'd be in this situation.
That's right. And that very student,
you know,
I was at an awards banquet, and she looked tired. This spring, I walked up to her and said, "Oh, you look exhausted." She goes, "Well, I was up at 5:30. What are you doing up at 5:30? Cleaning the house so that she could come to school."
Exactly.
But she was doing her chores, right? So she was still, she's a 19-year-old. She could say, "I'm done with this. I'm out of here." But maybe that's why she's going to be an RA, so she can be out of here. But on that particular day, she was exhausted because she had responsibilities to make a house of 12 or 13 people run, and that caused her to get up before most of us were awake.
Yeah.
I think so. We probably would do it sooner rather than later. So maybe being more or able to juggle the projects and issues on a little better rate than we were when we first started talking about housing. So I think yes. Whether we add another facility is still, I think, up in the air. It'll depend on how this goes, and then the key will be how broad a footprint do we set throughout Southwest Michigan and the rest of the state and Northern Indiana. What's the demand? It's like any offering a service or a product. You can continue to look at what you're able to offer and making sure you're meeting your current customers' needs. So I think that'll be one of those decisions we'll have here in the next 6 to 7 months about, well, are we interested in another building? And if so, how big, where do we put it, what are the issues we'd have to consider?
There's an against all odds part to this. I mean, we were looking at declining graduations from high school in our Michigan population, so just less students to work with. And that's a national trend. So you've got less people to draw from, so you've got to go out regionally. It has scared me the whole time in terms of, are there just enough students who want this kind of experience and who have whose parents have the incomes to be able to pay for this? Because this takes us into a group of parents who are going to have to shell out cash for the community college experience, whereas we've had an awful lot of students who've been able to finance this through financial aid and some loans. And so I just can't wait to see the mix of students who have arrived here and see, can we reproduce this? If we can have 130 students who would not have been here and who are now reaching into the north, into areas that we've never really been competitive in, the south, then that's a really exciting thing, because they're going to enhance our local students' experience. You bring in kids from other areas who just have other cultural experiences, and it's going to enhance every classroom, I think, that we sit in. So, but it worries me, just that whole sort of it's a tough time to be building residence halls when our potential.
Well, I've been thinking about that, if we build another one, and so I'm thinking that we just go to bunk beds in all the rooms, and we can double.
Isn't that a great idea?
Isn't that,
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot.
Nice.
And so
You need to stop thinking right now.
Would be cost effective.
it would be very, I knew you would like that idea, so.
The parents whose kids might be choosing this probably have already considered going to another four-year institution. So they're thinking about not just, Lake Michigan College, or I don't go to college, but they've thought about, I want to go to Western, I want to go to Ferris, I want to go to MSU or the U. And for those parents, they're realizing that price tag has just absolutely outpriced their ability to pay. And so I think one of the things that it's great to be able to tell parents is, if your son or daughter wants to get away from home and feel that experience of getting away from home in a graduated way, so that they don't have to throw tons of money and your earnings turn into loans, for this is a great median step, and you don't have to sacrifice an ounce of your trajectory towards a four-year college experience.
Or quality of education.
Exactly. And so it's a great conversation to have with parents, to be able to say, we know exactly what you want for your son or your daughter, and we know what they want. If they can imagine doing that four-year experience, starting it here, where they live here and they create a life here and then transfer, you will never be sorry that you did that. Your son or daughter will get done quickly, will transfer, and will not have the debt hanging over their heads or your heads at the end of the day.
But also isn't going to be shortchanged. I mean, they're going to be living in an environment which we've already heard some of the people touring saying, this is not their mother and father's residence hall.
That's right.
This is apartment type living, and it's quality, and they get an opportunity for student life. So they're still going to get the student life, they're still going to get the programs, they still get the cultural events.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't have the high price tag.
Right. Every bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctoral degree person that we run into in the community who says, I started at LMC, uses the word confidence. It gave me confidence, so that when I went to the next place, I was ready. And these folks now, they're professionals out in the community. You wouldn't think that confidence would be an issue, but over and over you hear that word, that when I started out, I just wasn't quite ready, and I would have been gobbled up in the four-year setting, and so I gained confidence. And I think a residence hall only enhances that confidence. You have people, like you said, get to experience dorm politics, dorm leadership, get to experience working it out with a roommate and in a community. That's all confidence building. That all creates the capacity to go on to the four-year.
I wish it was an option available to me when I graduated from high school. I certainly would have taken advantage of it, because being the first person in my family to go to college, I was scared to death going away to a big 4-year university.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so maybe that's part of, I mean, this team, I think at heart, you're a first generation, I'm a first generation. Did you have parents go to college?
No, I'm a first generation.
I think the first generation experience around our cabinet room is important because we all have that sense of what if, what if we hadn't? What if our parents hadn't allowed us, supported us, encouraged us to go break the rules? We wouldn't be sitting here. And I think that's what gives us the excitement, to have first gen students who will now be living with us, and we get a little bit more input into developing them and helping them launch.
I've got, a couple kids that will be going to college, and you sit and look at the price tag that's associated with the 4-year schools, regardless of which one you're interested in, and it takes your breath away. Whether you can actually save that amount of money for the 4, 5, or 6 years it'll take to get them through a baccalaureate degree. And so when you start to compare what we're doing here with the smaller classrooms, the higher effort to make them be successful, the personal attention, and then the housing actually just kind of fits in very nicely. They get that experience that I think some of us didn't have. And so this is just, I think, a very nice transition from a home environment to a little more freedom, a little less financial risk for not only the student but the family. And then if everyone's paying attention and working hard, I think it'll actually move them through their baccalaureate degree process more efficiently than if they just go right to the 4-year school. And so I think it's got a great value to the families. The ones I've encountered in the hallways as they're coming out after signing up, it's almost joyful how excited they all are. Not only the student, but the parents and the brothers and sisters that have come along. And so it really does convey, this is a family undertaking. This is a family enterprise. And it's just so great for us to be part of it.
Yeah, one of the cool things about community college is that I have, since coming into the community college system, have felt the expectation from the community on our performance. When you were at Notre Dame didn't care an awful lot about what was going on in the community in terms of their expectations about them. They had a purpose that was independent from that. But you feel the community expecting things from you. I mean, one of the things that makes, I think, us an effective college is that you have a huge trust factor in the community. People look at you and they, for whatever reason, they trust you implicitly.
That's rather scary.
Yes, it is.
But that translates into them sort of supporting us, even when we go out on a limb and do some pretty aggressive or entrepreneurial things. But I think the flip side of that is the community expects things from us. They expect affordability. And that's pretty cool to have a higher education institution sort of looking over their shoulder and saying, you know what, we need to do this in a way that reflects our community and doesn't sort of outpace our community. And I think that's a cool factor about community colleges. But it's one of the things, you go stick an elite price tag on this, and the community would tell you, you've now, done something that's not characteristic of us. And I like that we have to listen to that.
Well, we've got a few other things that we're working on. This fall we'll start the baccalaureate degree in energy production and distribution management. We've got a grant request into the Economic Development Administration with the potential of building a brand new facility for manufacturing that we'll know in the end of, hopefully by the end of July. We'll be selling off ideally one of our buildings. We've got a wine program we're putting together. And so there's a few other things that we're paying attention to. And that's just the ones that keep me up at night. I don't
Paying attention to, well spoken.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're in line for a grant to redo, retrofit our entire main campus. And that will literally change each classroom on the campus, over 50 classrooms.
As well as the heating and cooling systems, the student areas, the library, virtually all aspects of the building will undergo some type of renovation, which will be very painful for everyone.
And we're trying to do this all within this next 2 years tops.
And not spend any money on it.
Right, no,
Yeah.
no problem, no stress at all.
At a time when community colleges locally, regionally, and nationally are experiencing a settling down of enrollments because of
Yeah,
the
that's not
employment
nice.
outlook being greater and generally the economy being greater, everybody is looking to sort of see a few less enrollments for the last couple of years and the next couple of years. So the timing's perfect, guys. Good idea.
Good
Well,
idea.
But, this is, part of life is investing when other people aren't.
That's right.
Yep.
And, if we're gonna be a successful enterprise, we need to make the investments with a long-term view of the future and start to look at where we can add value. So new programs, we started looking at a couple yesterday, and it was amazing how fast our staff could put together some numbers on what the potential market might be. And we've got some discipline now that I think we did not have 4 and 5 years ago.
And I think that we can take these challenges on because we have fearless leadership. Honestly, you never flinch. I know you say you stay awake at night perseverating about these things, but when you're the face of the cabinet and the face to the public, you just are calm.
She's thinking that her evaluation's coming up here in the next month, and it really isn't. So,
He-
nice try.
I'm investing
He
in the
weeps
next.
in his
You're
office,
taking
but,
a long-term future,
it's-
is that it? Oh, okay.
What I would do differently is I would have worked with our board to help them understand that it was an investigation phase up front. Some of the things we were looking into and testing the waters on were not necessarily the way that we were going to go ultimately. Well, were or were not, we weren't sure. I think that we talked with them a lot about this is the direction we're going, and then when we changed mid-course, they saw that as lack of leadership and lack of vision, and that we were clueless bumblers, which we're so clearly not.
Yeah.
The most painful part was somebody thought we should have the board help pick the color
Oh,
scheme.
Lord, have
And that,
mercy.
to say it was an unmitigated disaster would be polite, and so we'll never do that.
We never, ever,
least not
is
while
that
I'm here.
happening again.
It's funny, though, maybe some of the things that we would have done differently would have been in our communication and externally and our coordination as opposed to internally. I think that we,
Well, I think,
met and talked
I
a lot.
appreciate what you say. There's a sense that these can't be smooth all the time. I mean,
Oh,
these
it-
complex projects
Sure.
will have some
Yeah.
bumps, but, we moved through them, we dealt with them, and I think we're coming out the other side okay.
we didn't do a lot of yelling.
No.
No, I think we're going to live with some things in terms of the actual structure that we would say, oh, why did we
No,
do that
that's it.
differently? And I wish, now, that I had sort of gone to a few more of these kinds of these places, these residence halls, just to get a better visual, because I don't read a blueprint very well. I mean, I can see it, but it doesn't come alive.
We'd like to thank the leadership panel at Lake Michigan College for spending some time with us talking about the value and process of bringing housing to a community college campus. For more information on the Student Housing Matters podcast, visit our website at studenthousingmatters.com.